Hey now, welcome to
Dirty side of the track.
I'm Brian, that's Rob, and we're happy you joined us. It's America's leading Formula One podcast. I got thrown off by the extra sound effect a little bit there. Hope everyone's doing fantastic. Rob, how are you, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm tired. I've basically spent the week on the road this week. I had Monday through Wednesday at a conference in Boston, then a 30-hour road trip to Chicago to pick my son up. Got back late last night, and therefore not had a chance to go and fix the laptop. So we're still on AirPods and phones. So we'll see how this goes.
It'll be
But
great. It'll be great.
I was just glad that, in a way, I was glad there wasn't a race this week because I think I would have been toast. Oh man, yeah. So, well, what have we got? We haven't really got a lot. We got a decent amount of news and social. You've been busy on the video vault. We've got a kind of a bumper Imola preview because we're kind of almost going to rehash last year's, being as it never happened, and we got some extra stats in and around that area as well. So maybe a long one today, but a good one. It's going to be quality over quantity. Yeah.
Plus, we got the Pitlane Paul reviews from last week, so I can't wait to hear those.
True, that's a good point. Do we want to start on what I was calling Miami twice?
Yeah.
Because we where do we want to go? Do you want to re-hit all of Miami and do some of the things that came out of that? And
Yeah,
then
why don't you talk a little
maybe?
bit about what we learned about like the broadcast itself, and we can talk about a few other things, and then Paul can close out the week that was last week.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Well, I mean, the main stat that I caught was that ABC's broadcast of the F1 Miami GP got an average audience of 3.1 million viewers, which
Wow.
beats the previous record of 2.6 that watched the inaugural Miami event in 2022. So people were saying the bubble was bursting and Max's domination and blah, 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 blah meant that the audiences are falling away. Well, maybe not so much in America. Put it on at a decent time where it's not in the middle of the night and people would tune in. Who knew?
Also, so something else I was thinking about with the Miami Grand Prix, and a couple weeks ago I talked about the idea of really kind of having constant tracks and flex tracks in sort of a quarterly bracket, and you use the quarters around the world to minimize some of the travel. And I realized, and I had complained, I'm like, well, this is silly because you get Miami and then a few weeks later you go to Imola and then a few weeks back to Canada. But then you have Coda and Vegas and Mexico and Brazil and so on later in the year. And so as I look at it, I said, why wouldn't you move Miami back? And then I realized as I'm watching the race and thinking about it, the Dolphins play there. So you can't exactly have the whole place set up for F1 and then get it up and down in time in between. Even if they had 2 weeks away, I don't think would be enough time. So I think they have to have the race well before the NFL season gets going. And so I think you're always going to have Miami earlier in the year. And I hadn't thought of that because the rest of North America, with the exception of Canada, is later in the year. So anyway, it was good.
So why couldn't you bring those? Why couldn't you bring those ones earlier to follow straight after Miami?
You would have to move the whole North American leg up to the front.
But the weather's still all right at this time of year. I mean, I don't know. Canada would be okay, but yeah, no, it's a good point about the NFL. Now, I'm going to say more you, but it's not really more you because I laid into it as soon as you put it up there. We went in big style to mocking the prices that were being shown at the Miami GP, like lobster roll for $280, and we went big style on this, mocking the whole thing and saying this is insane.
Right. We were wrong. And so I did say there were two things from last week that we wanted to clean up on Isle Brian. And so the first is good prices existed, right? So it was not $180 for a single serving. And I did say, though, on the pod, if you go back, I say unless it was a catering size, and it was. But the people who relayed that information said it was an individual size. So I had to take the TikTok and Twitter info. It definitely was a catering size. I did see the individual sizes. They weren't bountiful, but at least it was, $18 for a tiny bit as opposed to $180.
Well, they were saying that $280 lobster roll was to serve 10, so that makes it $28 a lobster roll, which isn't too bad for an F1 venue.
But again, it's not like a big lobster roll. It was like an appetizer lobster
roll. Yeah, I know, but not quite the sticker shock that we were going on about last week.
Exactly. And then the second thing, which I did say, and I was worried about, when Max didn't have the pace, I said, what bothers me is what happens if they round up later and they say he had floor damage or another problem to the car. And that's what happened. Because floor damage is everyone's excuse for everything, right?
Yeah, I know. I saw this story, and I saw the thing about going over the cone, and it zoomed in, and Dr. Obbs did a good piece on showing the damage. The only thing I would say is maybe he did get some damage. He got a perfect amount of damage that was enough to stop him catching Lando, but didn't allow him to be caught by anybody else behind him. So he got maybe some damage that put him in that little zone of faster than his teammate in the same undamaged car, but not fast enough to catch up with Lando. So you can take that and go, okay, yeah, maybe. However, also, if you look at the beginning of the race, Oscar kept Max in 3 seconds for the entire first stint. So Max, I don't think, had the domination anyway, even if he didn't get this minuscule floor damage. Not minuscule, but enough to like not allow him to catch Lando. So if he'd have been driving away and was like 10, 15 seconds clear of Oscar, and then after this going over the bollard, he wasn't able to catch Lando, I think we would all just gone, Max hasn't really been beaten kind of almost fairly in inverted commas here because he had damage. However, he didn't drive off away from Oscar. He couldn't break more than 3 seconds. It was Oscar held him. And actually, I am going to still say that Lando beat Max fair and square because it's a driver error. Max drove over a cone and damaged his car. So I'm still going to be on the whole he was beaten fair and square thing.
I agree. I'm with you there.
I know you don't debate it, but it's just a lot of people came out and said, Max still hasn't been beaten properly. I'm like,
no, he was beaten properly. But I guess this is the second time this season where, breaking news, Rob is the optimist again. And so I am hopeful that you're right. I am so hopeful that you are correct, that we have a race in Imola, and we'll talk about Imola in a minute, because I am very, 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 very confused who to think is going to be on the top step of the podium.
Yeah, definitely. Although I'm going to put an asterisk against that. I still think it was the track temperature, the layout of the track, I think probably played more into other cars like McLaren's strengths and less into Red Bull. So even if the performance, the other teams like McLaren and Ferrari are closing, I still think we're going to see some races, and we'll talk about Imola later, where Max still drives off into the distance. I don't think we've kind of jumped over that hurdle yet, but just think that people trying to write off Lando's first win as being almost lucky because of the safety car and the damage. Well, that's called racing. These things happen. Safety cars happen. Damage happens. Well done, Lando.
And on that, we can totally agree. But now let's hear from the actual expert, Pitlane Paul, who was there in Miami and filed in a sprint weekend his usual 3 reports. But first, we must toast him with the music. All right, so Paul, thank you again. These came in. We really appreciate you doing this, and we weren't able to get them in the pod last week, but they are epic. At least the 4 seconds of each, the beginning each, I listened to get them in the right order. Here we go.
Hey now, so it's another triple end. Start off with Route 66. I did a little drive along there. Got harassed by some tornadoes. Made it through. Very scary for anyone who's ever been in that sort of environment. I know it's not common, I guess, in the USA, but it's more common than it is in Worcestershire in the UK. That is for sure. Pretty scary. People lost lives. It's not great, but I made it. I survived all the way to Chicago, where I met up with a sat man for a couple of beers and discuss a whole range of topics. Actually, not just Formula One, but a whole plethora. Yes, there's the word of the triple ender. A plethora of conversations. Very good. A very enlightening evening. A couple of glasses of wine as well, just to keep the sophistication up, because we are quite sophisticated, me and Sup.
We had a great time.
That was great. Great to catch up. Anyway, let's discuss what we've just seen. When I say let's discuss what we've just seen, what I'm going to frantically do now on my laptop is search out the qualifying results, because I won't lie to you, my session ended after the first qualifying session. Look, I don't want to talk too much on this, but because it's a very touchy subject, but naturally we, from our side, Valtteri, we had an engineer change. Circumstances very unclear. Can't really go into it, but obviously that then has a negative effect as such on our performance, because we you're used to working in certain ways, and you got someone new in who, through no fault of their own, it's just the way it is. So we've unfortunately had a little bit of a backward step. We found ourselves out in quali 1. which is a little bit sad. And then really it went a little bit as expected from that point onwards up until Mercedes. Quite shocked they have both gone out. Sort of tells you a little bit of their performance. They're very up and down this year, aren't they? There's no standard with Merc this year. It's quite fascinating actually how they can be that up and down. The one thing that isn't up and down, of course, is a certain Dutchman at the top. So Max once again, who it looked like he was struggling, especially in the practice session. So probably teasing us. He did what Max does. Charles second, Sergio third. Danny Rick fourth. That is an incredible effort for him. Incredible effort for RB. He needs some good results. I know he's under the cosh a little bit. So great for him, and great for the team as well. It is pretty good. Oscar Piastri in sixth. Obviously in quali one we had an incident with Oscar with Valtteri. Again, that goes down to, well, it sounds like I'm going to blame the engineer, but I mean, you sort of have to. It's their job to alert you if a car is coming behind on a quick lap. So through whatever situation, which I am sure will be investigated, that didn't happen, and that's naturally what happens from that point. So anyway, onwards till tomorrow.
Bye. Someone in the background yelling bye-bye. That was fascinating. So then, obviously, for those remembering, the weekend gets a lot more exciting as we go into Saturday with the sprint race and then the race quali. So here's Paul's review from Saturday.
Saturday. Okay. Well, sprint race. Yeah. Max won, and then we had qualifying and Max's pole. That's Saturday done, really. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting on Sunday. Lots of DRS action. But, yeah, I mean, let's just talk about Magnussen. Excellent protection for Hulkenberg. He really is a great team player. It's questionable, it's debatable. I actually found the penalties to be a little bit harsh. I thought they were. But, yeah, maybe on review, they probably were a little bit deserved. So, I mean, it's comical, but that's what you do to protect your teammate. That's actually, it's quite clever by him. It's just, he's risking a ban as well. So it's brave move. I believe he has come out in the press and actually, said that as well. So fair play. That's what you got to do sometimes to get what you need. Apart from that, it's sprint races. I don't know. I like them. I just, again, I'm going to be boring and just say like it should be points right the way down. It's a bit, it's a bit rubbish when you're running around in 15th, 16th, 17th around that area, and there's just nothing to play for. So I don't mind them. All good, all fine. Let's move on to race day tomorrow. See what we get. Could be another big DRS thing. I imagine Max is going to drive away. Who knows? Let's hope there's some fireworks at the start.
Checo will provide a little bit of those fireworks.
I was going to say, isn't it great to be able to listen to these like Captain Hindsight? I mean, we would anyway on the day, but now the whole week has gone by, and it's like I just can't wait to see what he makes of Sunday.
Paul's the man. Here comes the Sunday recap, everybody.
Hey now, right. Well, I apologise. It's a bit windy out, so I'm outside a bar. That was Miami, race done. We got a new winner. 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 So congrats to Lando. Obviously, fantastic for him. And look, it was deserved. It wasn't a luck win. He had Max behind him after a safety car, and he outpaced him and got to the end. So massive congrats for him for that. That's love a Harley. Anyway, actual race. Look, it was pretty drab, pretty boring up until the safety car, which was Magnussen. I think I spoke about him on the section yesterday. He can't really have a lot of complaints at some of the battering he's getting at the moment. It was a crazy sort of move. So obviously that triggered a lot of things. Obviously, Max hitting the bollard, which caused the virtual safety car, which then triggered the pit stops, which led to what ultimately became a race win. So it's a shame that we have to have a safety car to actually make these things sort of interesting. Because up to that point, it wasn't. There was not really a lot happening, I don't think. And then it was pretty flat out. There was a lot, Oscar drove like a champ. He had his front wing mashed for a little bit by Sainz. I'm overly convinced that Sainz didn't do that intentionally, actually, if I'm being honest. So, excuse me. I'm obviously not going to accuse anyone of that. It's good racing. Lewis looked like he was put a bit of a fight again. Merkel looked half decent, even though naturally complaining about it. So, yeah, I think in all honesty, it turned into being quite a good race. It was, it was fairly decent. There was a bit going on. There was enough action to keep us all interested. And like I said, the fact that we got another winner, it wasn't Max, and it was not Max DNF. It was just an actual win rather than lucky win. It was. Yeah, I think that's maybe he's not that untouchable after all. Apart from that, going down, Alpine, good performance. Looks like they're getting that thing back on track. Haas again scoring points. Ricciardo disappointing after the highs of yesterday's sprint efforts. Us again, as we are, just seem to be, constantly disappointing. And that's it, really. America's been great. Like I've said, I love being over again. Back over to Europe for a few races, and before we head back over towards Canada, I'm off to Washington for a couple of days. Did see Donald Trump today. That was quite a nice one. Got a fists up from him. Probably needs more than that. But yeah, good to have people of that caliber. I don't know where I'm going with this. But yeah, interesting. Good Miami Grand Prix. I've got to be honest. I think it's good. And let's go back to Europe, back to Imola. Looking forward to that. Catch you soon.
Paul, thank you so much as always, and we're sorry we weren't able to get these on last week. That was a great review, and as Rob and I said, we both enjoyed the Miami Grand Prix a ton. But I think it's time we move on to what else is going on.
Yeah, well, what is going on? Oh my gosh, what's going on with the wet weather wheel tire cover things? Did you see those? The Ferrari were running.
Those were ugly.
I get it. They got to test the way that they can try to limit spray, but hopefully not by using those. It just looked awful. But if that's what it needs to be, so that we don't sit around watching rain falling and never using the blue tires, then I guess maybe we have to get off our little high horses and say, look, if it stops the spray, I guess they've got to combat the diffuser spray as well, because those things look like they're obviously only looking after the tires.
Well, and then what's wrong with using like semi-trailer mud flaps that have the two silhouettes of the naked girls on it and with the metal bar at the bottom and it flaps? Those are on the back of most semis here in the United States. What, can we just throw those on the back of the Ferrari when they do the next testing and see if those work? I'm sure they kind of fit in the branding, styling milieu that Ferrari's going for.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just going to say that when I was driving through Indiana yesterday in a rainstorm, those flaps really don't help. I couldn't see anything. There was a period of about a mile where I was just praying because I didn't know where the highway was anymore. It was somewhere out there. Yeah. And I was just navigating via brake lights. That was about it. Anyway, moving on from those. Again, we've talked about the eyeballs on the sport was going up. People are saying this bubble has burst, but F1's revenues are up 45% and exceeding 500 million in Q1.
5%.
That's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost enough money to pay for Brad Pitt's F1 movie that he's working on. The filming of that movie. Why am I drawing a blank on the name of the movie? Or do we even know the team? I used to know the team. We saw them all the time last year. Now I can't remember any of this. The Kaczynski movie, the guy who made Top Gun, Brad Pitt's F1 movie, has gone past $300 million, making it one of the most expensive films ever. And apparently it ain't done. So I look forward to watching this thing come together. I can't wait for it. Usually these movies do very well, and someone did some analysis on, the big budget, what they call them racing movies, and they showed like Ford versus Ferrari and other things, and they recap a lot of that money. So we'll see.
They do, but a lot of those films cost a hell of a lot less to
Right.
make. So they were saying chances of this one breaking even, it's going to have to really do well. But
Well, I mean, Top Gun Maverick's still making a ton of money, so I'm not saying this will be that good, but it's got to be. It can do it. I'm going to go see it at least 2 or 3 times on my illegal download stream, which will give them $0. And then we had news from Ferrari that Javi is out. Charles Leclerc's race engineer is out as his race engineer and will go, according to Ferrari, bring his valuable experience gained as a race engineer with the F1 team to development of other important company programs, which I wish him well. Of course, we never would wish ill on anybody, but I will miss his radio messages. I will miss this guy.
It's a mistake.
Yeah, it's a mistake. I will definitely have to.
Copy, we will check that.
And then eventually we'll
come back to you.
I mean, I will miss all of those messages at the end. But the biggest, of course, was always when he would make a statement and end it with
question.
So I will miss all of those statements.
How long did it take you to crop all of those?
I have had them. Those are so good. I didn't have to do any work for that. I just had to go find the files at the top of my sheet here. I even have the longer version. I have this one. I mean,
question is, would you like to have a new medium to go through the traffic or prefer a new hard? Question.
I mean, I've got all kinds of these. Those are the greatest radio messages ever. But he will be replaced by the performance engineer for Charles' car, Brian Bozzi. And if anyone's big into performance engineer trading cards, get your Bozzies ready because he's going to be big for Italy for Charles.
Okay. And talking of Italy, kind of, now that I saw this, I found this one today, plumbing the depths of news feeds, was did an F4 commentator accidentally leak news about Antonelli? So at the opening round of the Italian F4 Championship, Ian Salvestrin was commentating, and he was talking about Antonelli, who had won the championship in 2022. He said, Andrea Antonelli, the soon-to-be announced, I won't finish that sentence, and then got all skittish and got flustered and quickly changed the subject. This is while a safety car was going around. He was just like chewing the fat, and everyone's saying, he's got inside information. He knows that Antonelli is going to get unveiled as an F1 driver any minute now. Did he, or is it going to be something more trivial that he wasn't supposed to say about him? I don't know. Is it going to be unveiled as the new head sponsor of Ovaltine? I don't know.
The jar's round, the glass is round. Why don't they call it a round team? Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's at this point, we now have what I would, if I'm being honest, say are low-grade rumors flying around. Like the Hulk to Audi became a high-grade rumor, and then the Logan leaving the seat soon became a high-grade rumor, but we haven't heard anything about that too much recently.
No, we haven't.
I still think, though, Kimi to Williams, I've heard Valtteri to Williams next year, I've heard Pierre to Williams next year. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff flying around. I think we're going to need a couple more dominoes, and people are now saying that like Sainz to Mercedes for a year is a high-risk move for him. I mean, there's so many things kind of flying around. I guess we'll have to just see 1 or 2 more dominoes, and I'm not necessarily even saying they'll be big. It's just, once you fit more puzzle pieces in, the other ones become easier to put in. And so we need 1 or 2 more to kind of happen, and then I think we'll start to see, A, the rest of 24, and then B, what 25 kind of looks like.
Yeah, agree. Right, just quickly before we go to the video vault, I've got to try a quick game on you.
Oh, boy.
I've
a chance for me to look dumb? Sounds good.
No, I don't think it will. It'll be whether or not it works, I guess. This is almost similar to the failed game that you tried, and I just wanted to give you redemption here. But so, obviously, many, many miles driving by myself, I went through a lot of podcasts that I was catching up on, and one of them that I caught up on was the Pad Hoc, which features Nate Saunders, who's been on the show a couple of times. And he'd stolen a game of a different podcast that was nothing to do with sport and twisted to make it sport-based. And it's cryptic clues for drivers. So I'll give you an example of the first ones and just tell you how it worked out, which was top level cold weight.
Hold on.
The cryptic clue for this driver, right? And I'll break it down and tell you who it was so you can understand how it works, right? So top level was max, cold was chill, and weight is tons. The driver was Max Chilton. That is a top level.
I get it.
Yeah, you get it. Now, take it on Lawrence Barretto, and he just couldn't get. And I got straight away and was screaming at the thing was Judy Dench up on high. Do you know who Judi Dench is?
I do. Dame Judi Dench, you could have said.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So is this Dame up on high?
If you were up high, where might you be?
On a pedestal? Podium?
Oh,
Dame podium?
on something.
Dame ladder? Damien?
Oh, no, close. Think more geographical. Where might you be stood to be up high?
Mountain?
Not as big as a
Hill.
mountain.
Damon Hill.
Damon Hill.
Yeah.
She is on a hill, Damon Hill. That's brilliant. So they had kind of all these ones, and they were asking people to send them in. So I've sent one into them, and I'm going to see if you get this. But if not, you can think about it for the week, and we can touch base on it next week. Which is regret. Oh no, you won't know this. I just realised why you won't know this, because it requires local UK knowledge, which is going to massively impair your ability to do this.
It's going to hurt a little bit. The Midwestern Floridian New York
people
boy.
Listening can send us a message on Twitter if they think they get this, which is regret bread rolls in a Welsh town with an instrument.
Yeah, I know a lot about Welsh towns.
Yeah, I know.
Kerflufflin.
That's the reason I realised I probably killed it for you. But so I was having all manner of, and then told this to my son on the way back, and he was like, "Oh, I can't come up with a way of like making a cryptic clue for Lewis, because I think for his surname I could do Pig Hotel." I was like, "Pig Hotel?"
Well,
like,
ham pig. What's Hotel Ton?
Hilton, Ham Hilton.
Ah. You could do an easy one for Lance Stroll, like something like Sir Blankalot walks around.
So yeah, you get the idea. So
I get the idea.
That's the one I put out there. See if people can answer that one. You might need UK knowledge for the Welsh town, I admit. So it was funny, and we were then trying to come up with new ones of our own on the drive back. So which wasted a good couple of 100 miles, which was great.
I like that. Although I will say the reason I figured it out and understood it, except for your Welsh town reference, is it's very similar to the game show I did try, where we had Nikki Latifi and Queen Latifah, and you put them together to get Queen Latifah. And then, but there was something there. I just could never quite land the plane. But one thing we can do is open the video vault and talk a little bit about it. Videos of the week. Now, I will be honest, it was a bit of a crazy week, both work and personal-wise for me, so I'm a little behind on Twitter and other places, so apologies, I'll get back out there at some point, but I did see some videos. And first off, Connor Moore delivered. Connor Moore, he's a international treasure. People would always say national treasure here in the States, but he's obviously not of the States, so we'll call him an international treasure. Lando Norris wins is the video title. It's 2 minutes on the Connor Moore channel. It is great. He does impersonations of other people congratulating Lando, and so I enjoyed that one. We had the Sky Sports F1 video, The Decider. How many 2024 F1 drivers can Pinkham and Brundle name in 30 seconds? F1 Lies. It's nearly 9 minutes, but of all the four I'm going to tell you about, this is the one to watch if you have the time. I've watched this over the years, and it's basically 30 seconds to name things. And it may sound easy to name F1 drivers in 30 seconds, but you can't hem-haw or stutter, because if you try to go for all 20, that you have 1.2 seconds a driver. So I mean, it's fascinating, but definitely give it a view. And then there were a couple themes to the next two, or a theme, I should say, to the next two. In full, George Russell takes Ed Sheeran for a Miami hot lap. And then also, Did We Break the Car? Lewis Hamilton takes Kendall Jenner for a Miami hot lap, both on the F1 channel. I really, for some reason, really like the celebrity hot laps. I don't even care who the celebrity is. Like, I don't give a rip about Kendall Jenner. I couldn't tell you a thing about her. I know she's a socialite, Kardashian relation. I don't give a crap. And then Ed Sheeran is obviously a good musician, a talented musician. The thing they have in common, they both freaked out like little kids sitting in the passenger seat for these rides. Ed Sheeran was holding on so tight. I mean, he showed his hands. There were bruises from him like hanging on, like welts, dents in his hands. It's so worth it. Both of them are great and totally worth a view. But again, if you only have time for one, check out the Sky Sports F1. And then last thing I'll say before Rob, you can make any comments. Moving Bricks did a great Miami Grand Prix review. If you haven't seen it, it's the Lego one. They've upped their game in the last couple weeks. It feels like it was really good. And then Lollipop Man, always great. I still haven't seen part 2 though of Miami because he did it in 2 parts. And then P1's funniest tweets, as always, fantastic. Those are kind of 3 of my go-tos whenever I can't sleep and I want to recap the race that was. So you get a chance to see any of those, Rob, or are we busy traveling?
Yeah, all of the above. Although I did, bizarrely, when I was in the passenger seat for a bit when my son was driving, I did see a Conor Moore one, but I don't know if it's a really old one or not. I was flicking through something. It was Carlos Sainz meets
Conor Moore
doing. Yeah, I knew that was enough. I had a figure.
I have seen that in the paddock. So they're in the paddock with like Ant Davidson or somebody. And
yeah. And Conor Moore's doing the whole impression thing, and then Carlos Sainz just turns up. And
so
he demands to hear his real voice because he's like, I've only ever heard you do impressions, which you're brilliant at, but can I actually speak to Conor?
But Carlos is like so. It's almost like
he's almost starstruck.
Exactly. He's like, wait, that sounds just like me. And so,
but then the Ed Sheeran one, I do have to mention again, friend of the pod, Nate Saunders, for a second time this week. Was that? Did you see any of the pictures of Nate and Ed Sheeran celebrating together?
Nate was very excited. Both them spent time with him, and then the team was promoted, Ipswich or something.
Okay, you do understand. Yeah. They said it's a fairly. You might call them a yo-yo team, Ipswich Town. They've been in the Premier League before, then they'll drop down divisions, but they've made it back to the hallowed ground of the Premier League. So Nate and Ed were celebrating together. It's quite funny seeing like you've got an F1 journalist and a musician coming together over football in an F1 event. It's like, it's worlds colliding, but it was great. But I think that's time to slam shut the video vault.
Gotta be impressed. I knew it was about the promotion of Ipswich.
I am very impressed, actually.
I saw this video quickly, and friend of the pod, Nate, having a good time. But anyway, back to you, Rob, for Imola.
Imola. So I'm not going to lie. I pretty much went back to last year's preview show notes and ripped the whole thing out because I thought poor old Imola didn't really get a chance to shine because of the awful weather they had. We had the huge flooding in the region, and the Grand Prix actually got cancelled last year. So looking at the notes of the previous race of what had happened is all still relevant because that still is the last race that we had in Imola. So, 63 laps of the 3.05 mile Autodromo Enzo Dino Ferrari, or just known as Imola. Anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, as I believe they say in these parts.
Counter.
How high-speed corners and the drivers love it. So a little bit of a kind of a sort of review of the history. Built in 1950, ready for testing in 52. Racing began in 53. And it's one of those non-championship events that me and Brian still haven't got down to the bottom of. 63 was a non-championship event won by Jim Clark for Lotus. They had another one in 79 won by Lauda. But then in 80, Imola officially came into the World Championship. It was the first time since 1948 that Monza hadn't held the Italian Grand Prix. And they'd given it to Imola. And it was such a success won by Nelson Piquet. They went, you know what, let's have 2. And in Italy, so we had Monza did the Italian GP, and the San Marino Grand Prix was established and remained on the calendar to 2006. Then it all went a bit wrong. They hadn't really been keeping the construction up to date. So they took it off the calendar 2007. It wasn't there in 2007. Loads of construction work, got a contract in place to come back 10 years later in 2017. Legal dispute got in the way. But in 2020, the Emilia Romagna GP was launched with a slightly different layout. So now this is now 3.05 miles as opposed to the 3.081 when it was San Marino. I mean, that's a big difference to track layout, which means all the records are kind of skewed. When we look at it here, it's kind of the difference between whether it was the San Marino GP or the Emilia Romagna. So, but as we stand here in 2024, we are 30 years on from probably the worst weekend that I ever watched in the sport, where we lost both Ratzenberger and Senna on the same weekend in 1994. There are rumours out there that McLaren are going to do a special livery for this to honour Senna, and Tommy from P1 put out this render, which was absolutely gorgeous.
If
but
they
also
did something like that, I'd lose my mind.
Same here, but it absolutely won't happen because it's the classic white and red cigarette branded
Marlboro
car, and they're not going to cover all that exposed carbon fiber up, are they? And put weight onto the car. So I'd love to see the red and white McLaren run, but there'll be some nod to it. I think I saw a picture of Lando wearing a red and white McLaren hat this week, which has set everybody into a frenzy that there's going to be a new livery. But I'm getting Ferrari blue car vibes.
Yeah, me too. The current name, we did this a couple weeks ago, but this is still my favorite. The current actual name of this race, the Formula One MSC Cruises Gran Premio del Made in Italy e del Emilia Romagna 2024. Alrighty then. The second part that I'd say is when we did our bracket, hashtag February F1 Fantasticness, if you want to find it on Twitter, Imola got crushed in the first round by Interlagos. And so I'm not going to say that was the wrong result, but it was like 89-11, which was one of the most, if not, no, it was the second most dominating first round victory, however you want to look at it from each side of the cookie. So I'll be honest, I'm not like the world's biggest Imola fan. It's a good track. I don't have any problems with it, but it's not like if you ask me what are the good tracks, I'm not getting there on my first 5 fingers of my right hand until I get to the left hand possibly, and maybe even not even until I get to toes. So we'll see. But I am excited for it. I am excited for the race to be a proper weekend, if I can say that. I know we got more to talk about what's actually happened. We'll talk more about that tragic weekend a little bit, but like, I'm just excited. It's not a sprint, and I have nothing against sprints, but we're back to the old format, so I know what's going to happen. The old Brian can figure out when quali is going to be. It's morning here in the States in Central Time. It's 8 a.m. on Sunday, a beautiful time. It's perfect. And the quali, which basically every race you have to kind of look, is it the first half or second half of the race? So like 8 a.m. Central Time, is it 8 to 9 or 9 to 10? The day before, and it's 9 to 10. So it's even gives me an extra hour of sleep on Saturday, and then Sunday you wake up to an 8 a.m. race in Europe, in Italy, at Imola. So I'm super excited for the weekend. We'll get into the upgrades in a second. But, I wasn't actually watching. Like the 90s were hit and miss for me, and I think I missed this whole couple year stretch. So I was not a watcher during this terrible weekend in 94. So, like, I heard about it on the news, but that was about it. I mean, were you actually watching these events? Yeah? Okay.
I was watching it live, and of course, no internet. Nobody can be going onto Twitter to see what all the rumors are that are flying around. So you're just waiting to see what's being relayed to you. And I think his head must have moved very split second at the beginning. So everyone was like, oh, okay, he's moving. Which later turned out to be complete rubbish. But, they red flagged the race. I remember the helicopter coming down, the ambulance helicopter coming down onto the track, and somebody had been let out. I can't remember. I'd have to go and research it. But a car got let out of the pits under the red flag conditions because they'd been in already when it got red flagged, I think, and then they came back out again, didn't realize it was red flagged. They got released. They came on that scene at race pace.
No.
I mean, you've got like the helicopters landed, the car's there's marshals everywhere, and this car comes flying around the corners, people kind of trying to flag this thing down and go, stop. Like, oh my God, we would have been seconds away from making the tragedy even worse.
Wow.
There's all this concern. Helicopter takes him away. And then it just resumes and it goes off back to, and you don't hear anything. There's like, I don't think anything official came through for a good couple of hours after the race, because I still think this could be a fake memory, but I think I remember seeing it on the BBC Evening News, which was that they broke the news that Senna had died. So they'd had that false hope that the head had moved. He's gone away to hospital in the helicopter. We've restarted the race. We've done the race. The podium was very, very kind of understated. I think Schumacher won it, but it wasn't really kind of properly celebrated, and everybody went away and we didn't know what happened. It was just, a very bizarre event to watch. And, it wouldn't happen in these days because news would have leaked or something would have happened. Twitter would have been all over the place. There probably would have been a gazillion rumors of what was going on. In fact, in hindsight, maybe it's better to not have the social media when these types of things happen and just wait for the news to break, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, as Rob said, we didn't have a tragedy, just a tragic, horrendous weekend. As Rob said, we didn't have it last year because of other tragedy, the flooding in the region, so many people displaced, so much property, and just a horrible amount of people impacted by the flooding. So it's great to be back, and I am really excited to be back. There are some changes to the track before you cover the 22 race. There are some changes to the track, just to note, since we were there last. Piratella, turn 9, the asphalt runoff has been removed, which is effectively just means more gravel. And then Acqua Minerale, which, by the way, is one of my favorite turn names around. Acqua Minerale, which is like 11, 12, 13, the asphalt runoff has been reduced. So it still exists, but it's much smaller. And then what that means is the gravel comes in earlier. And then there's one towards turn 14, 15, Grassini. I don't even remember that name ever being used. The gravel trap has been added to the side of the course. So as we've talked about over the last couple years of this pod, the track limits scourge that has hit certain tracks, Imola is trying to get around that by saying, all right, you want to run wide, you got gravel to deal with, and a lot less about painted white lines and a lot more about getting stuck in the gravel or dealing with that. So it puts the burden on the driver and not on race control to try to hand out penalties like Salt Bay.
I'm good with that. I think gravel is a good natural deterrent to want to run wide. And it's been proven as being able to slow cars down well. I mean, I know we had the flip with Joe where they kind of got wedged in the gravel, but that aside, I think that the gravel traps work. I think help slow cars down before they hit kind of the barriers, the tire barriers. So I'm all for adding more gravel traps at those types of corners to kind of dissuade people from wanting to kind of just push it too far. Stay within the track, you're fine. Go too far, you got gravel on your wheels. Great. I'm not sure. Do we want to look back at 2022? It's so long ago. I don't even remember this. I'm looking at these notes, and I don't even really remember. So, apparently, it was a rainy start to the race.
I do remember Albon's brake fire in Q1 quali, and we were very confused how Williams could catch fire in the rain.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that, yeah. So we just go to the result then and just say, which bizarrely, 2 years later, is not looking massively unlikely apart from one person, I would say. So it was a Red Bull 1-2. So it was Max from Checo with Lando in third. George in fourth is maybe pushing it, I think, at the moment, that Mercedes, but Bottas in fifth. So I'm going to say that we probably won't see that happen.
Wait, you're saying that...
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
Won't be in fifth place this race?
I don't think so. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he won't be fifth. Yeah. Maybe he'll be first. But, oh my gosh, looking at upgrade central. So Miami, McLaren bought full upgrades to Lando and gave half of them to Oscar, and it looks like it did good for the McLaren. So they're going to equal it out. Oscar's going to get full upgrades. I don't think McLaren have got any more coming, but Ferrari are basically bringing a new car. They've got this huge list of upgrades coming, with the biggest one being that they've been inspired by and totally independently designed a side pod that looks identical to the Red Bull side pod, with the little overbite, smaller duct on the way in. Red Bull are bringing some new parts as well. Aston and Haas are bringing what's been described as a major set of upgrades. So all in all, as these things tend to go, someone's probably going to ace it, and we're going to see upgrades have a great impact. Others might be, was it Aston last year when Fernando took the upgrades off to go faster?
Yep. The downgrades. You know what? It's going to be fascinating, like you say, to see Oscar now having the same car as Lando and see what they do. To see Ferrari, who does not have those bumper shoulder pods that they have behind the drivers. So can they go with the skinny pods and make that work alone, or do they work in tandem? We don't know. So Ferrari, the way Ferrari seems to do things, they'll probably overheat or something because they won't get enough air into the engine because they don't have those shoulder pods that the Red Bull has. I'm just saying Ferrari's going to hose us up somehow. Just it. And then, I'm really excited. I can't wait for this race. I can't wait to see what happens. But here comes the hard part. Our predictions.
A question first before we go to the predictions. Yeah. So, Haas, they've been fast and they've been consistently scoring points. That's got to be a real conundrum of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or risk putting something on there that gets you even higher up into the points. Because the others make sense. Ferrari want to close the gap to Red Bull and probably McLaren now. Aston Martin needs to try and get back in the party because they were ripping up podiums last year and they've got nowhere near it this year. So, those all make sense. But the Haas one stood out of me as like, you want a real kind of dicey, you get this wrong, if it's a downgrade, then...
No. Yeah. They're giving it a weekend. And I mean, if you're Haas, right, you're always an optimist. Don't you think that, hey, Aston Martin ain't that far in front of us? They're not that good this year. We could pick them off maybe and then, see what we can do. And as we've said many times, it's so hard to pass the Haas. So if you can get that car in an even better quality kind of setup, you might be able to hold some cars off. You never know. I'm not saying you're going to get into 6th and stay there, but you could get into 6th in quality and maybe hold on to an 8th kind of situation, especially at some faster tracks.
Well, and that's what I mean, because they've been fast. I wonder if they do the split and the upgrade thing where
Yeah.
one of them takes and one of them doesn't, because they've got a fast car and they're going to Imola, which is fast. So you don't want to bring something that then helps you do a Williams and trade your speed in for nothing.
Right. We were fast last year, slippery in a straight line, and now we're going to add some downforce. But instead, what we did is took away the speed.
But didn't get any benefit from the
Right, we're still bad in low-speed corners. We got nothing when it comes to downforce.
Oh, man.
So I have no clue
Okay.
what to do now. Like, I have no idea what to say. I don't know. My prediction machine is broken. Like, as Lando would say, I got to find my Lando button. Here's my idea on what...
It's broken! It's broken!
I don't know what to say. I don't. You're the optimist. Max is running over the bollard, isn't going to crush him. But I still think it did. I'm actually wondering if someone's been kind of punching a little hole in Checo's floor every time he goes out to race, and that's why he can never quite catch up to Max. Oh, God.
Oh, I mean, I think it's me first this week, right? I think.
Yeah. Please, while I
remember.
sit over here and rack my brain to figure out what
No,
to say.
and as much as I think McLaren showed great strides, and Oscar was able to stay close to Max before any argument of damage could have taken place, that Red Bull's fast. And I think Max wins it. But I don't see Checo making it a 1-2 like last time out. Do I throw the upgrade gamble here? Am I going to throw... Well, okay, so my head now wants to say Max Lando is the head.
You cut out
The
Max
heart-
Lando who?
Max Lando Checo.
Okay.
But my heart wants to say Ferrari nail the upgrades and say Max Sainz Lando.
Ooh.
So,
Ooh.
but my head knows my heart is an idiot. So we're going to say Max Lando Checo.
All right. Well, okay. So we do have a different podium. I also have Max first because until we're sure he's beatable, I'm going to put him back on the top step. And I don't just mean the car. I mean he himself, Max F. Verstappen. Actually, it's E. Verstappen. It actually is. Emilian is his middle name, which is weird. So we got Max, and then I have Lando because I am a believer in those upgrades. I'm a believer in him. Although we have sat here on this pod when George won, and we're like, oh, now he's got the burden off his shoulders. He's gonna win a bunch more, and I know the car's been bad, but it just hasn't turned out. And like we said that for Carlos, and that actually has kind of happened. But the guy who's been Chuck consistent, I almost said Johnny consistent, but Chuck Leclerc has been in the top 4 every race so far. It's his time to be back on the podium again. I've got Charles making the best out of those upgrades over there. So I think I got Max, Lando, and Charles as my podium.
Yeah,
and if those turn out to be downgrades, then well, shame on me.
Part of me does want to lean back towards what the heart is saying, because the heart is also thinking about Ferrari always go way overboard in trying to turn up all engine modes and everything in Imola, in any Italian
Anywhere in
race
Italy.
because they want
Yep.
to. Yeah, so but I'm going to stick with it. Max Lando Checo.
Yeah, you took your finger off the chess piece, bro. Your move's done.
Yeah, it's exactly. I have. It's the move over. So yeah, that's that. We will wait and see what transpires this week. Like you say, normal practice quali race weekend. And I look forward to talking about how our predictions were totally wrong, and somebody, either the McLaren or one of the other upgraded teams, nails it, and we have another different winner or same repeat winner in Lando. But
It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see as well what upgrades work, how that all turns out. Does Max dominate again, or was that pace real from the McLaren? We will have a great traditional European race next weekend at Imola. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Can't wait to talk to you in a week's time.